Hey everybody, greetings, and welcome to Live with Lakita. Now, you guys are familiar with my various platforms and shows, and we are so excited that we are doing our soft relaunch of Live with Lakita that focuses on empowerment, education, politics, religion, and figuring out how we are to best navigate this world system. If you are unfamiliar, then go on over to our YouTube channel with Live with Lakita, and you will find a plethora of powerful information that will instruct you, empower you, and encourage you. But today, somebody say on today we are absolutely ecstatic that we have someone inside of our studio that is going to share with us some information that is going to be powerful. I want to do my due diligence and being able to share who he is to give credence to what he has done and why he is so important to me. You guys all know that I am an avid learner, and I'm always constantly encouraging my audiences across all social media platforms to also be a learner. Guess what? Because leaders are readers, and we are all reading the times, reading information, and then we're acting upon what we're reading. So for today, we've got none other than Morris O'Kelly, who is a political, we call him Mo Kelly in the world of politics and commentating, and he's a political and cultural affairs commentator. He's an award-winning radio program show called The Mo Kelly Show. It airs on KFI AM 640 in the Los Angeles, and the iHeartRadio is that particular affiliate, where each weekend he covers something from the latest politics to entertainment, bringing a variety of merged information that will change the way we see the way that we see things happening. Latest in 2016, he won a prestigious Southern California Journalism Award for his tribute in memory of B.B. King. In 2017, the Mo Kelly Show was featured as part of TNT's American Race series, hosted by Basketball Hall of Fame member Charles Barkley. His television commentation includes in political analysis that of KTT, Fox 11, CNN International, one of my favorite, CNN, the regular one of my favorite, MSNBC, one of my favorite, and serves as a featured commentator for HLNs across America with Carol Castillo. He's got so many different things. He's a graduate of Georgetown University, and oh my God, and that's in the business school, mind you. And he does all kinds of stuff. But what I really love is that he is a fourth degree black belt. So we're not fooling around with him and no level. Will you guys welcome my guest, Mr. Mo Kelly? Thank you so much for showing and coming on. How you doing today, brother?
I'm wonderful, Lakita. Thank you for having me on today. I'm excited for the conversation we're getting ready to have.
Yeah, this is a conversation. It is hot, and the people are already chiming in on our Facebook live stream. So a shout out to all of you guys that are so faithful to all the things that we're trying to do. Listen, I want to jump right into it. So I think our new president is about 43 days in or so from his inauguration. And what I'm wanting to do on this particular platform is to give understanding to what we're seeing, particularly to help to diffuse some of the lies, and then how do we replace it with the truth, right? And I knew no better person than to start with you, Mr. Mo, and how we're to do that. Right now, we was going to talk about some other stuff, but right now we'll start where we're at and go backwards. Okay. Right now, we've got a particular trade war with some of our most formidable neighbors, Canada, and they are coming and striking back hard. Tell us what's your thoughts about why? Why are we in this? What's happening?
Part of the Trump brand is chaos, and part of what he likes to do is to make other people uncomfortable, and it could be in the form of other nations. He's talked about these trade wars since his first term back in 2016 to 2020. He got into a brief trade war with China back then. If you know anything about tariffs, it's used as a negotiation tactic, but he's using it as an actual threat and weapon. And it's not really coherent as far as why he's doing it, what he hopes to gain. In regard to Mexico, his stated goal is to lessen illegal immigration as far as people coming across the border. That's his stated goal. In regard to Canada, his stated goal is to lessen the flow of fentanyl across the border. But unfortunately, history has shown that this is not likely going to yield those results, and it's going to be more of a financial burden on the United States as far as United States goods with respect to Canada, most definitely in the automotive industry, as a lot of our cars are made in both Canada and the United States. And to make it really simple, when you're building a car, it goes back and forth across the border in the process of construction, and it will be taxed because of the tariff each time it crosses the border,
Oh,
which
wow.
will likely raise the cost of cars, just for example, anywhere from $9,000 to $12,000, depending on the model. So there's going to be an adverse impact on Americans as far as the trade war. Why Trump is doing this, I couldn't tell you, but he is a disruptor and is an agent of chaos. And in the past, that has worked to his benefit.
You know, and as I was watching it, because I have this sort of infinity against anyone that is willing to stand their ground for their country. And I was looking at the prime minister in Canada and looking at what was going on, and they emphatically are not playing any games, because they're also thinking about the conversations that Trump has had regarding trying to make them a 51 state, the 51 state, trying to do all these things sort of underminingly and demeaning like their position of the country that they've been and the friend that they've been to the United States. So with all of this chaos, and we've seen that with the President Zelensky's, which I want us to talk about too, his recent stay at our a recent meeting at the Oval Office. How do we, as people that are watching this, what can we begin to do? Is there anything that we can do to fight against this sort of trade war?
Well, first, we need to acknowledge what is happening. If there's any consistent through line, is that President Trump has been very adversarial to our allies and has been an ally to our adversaries. If you look at how he treats Canada, if you look at how he treats Mexico, how you look at how he treats Ukraine, it's very adversarial. And to your point, it's demeaning and it's disrespectful. And he's very deferential to people like Vladimir Putin. He's very deferential to Kim Jong-un when it comes to North Korea. He's complimentary. He's never been disrespectful. He's never been demeaning to either of them. He's Viktor Orban in Hungary. He's never been disrespectful. These are dictators and strongmen. So recognize that consistency in how he conducts himself and also how he conducts foreign policy. The second part of your question is, what can we do? I don't want to seem pessimistic, but we did miss our moment in November.
I
There were
agree.
those who said that, well, I don't know about Kamala Harris. I don't know if I can trust her because of her record as a DA in San Francisco and how many black men she imprisoned or whatever. We've all heard the excuses. And maybe some people who were either Democrats or not Democrats decided to stay home or voted third party, or like Jill Stein. We find ourselves now in a situation where we're going to have to deal with President Trump and his majority in both the House and the Senate and the Supreme Court. We're going to have to deal with it for at least 2 years. That means the midterms is the earliest point in which we can actually do something and possibly flip the balance and make it more difficult for him to get his legislative agenda through.
And thinking about that, one of the things I went back and looked at, we the people in the United States, in order to form a more perfect union established, because see, we had to learn that whole little Constitution, aspect. And the feeling that I get, Mo, when I'm watching the various aspects of news, and sometimes even though I don't agree with the commentation of and commentary aspects of Fox, I listen to all news circuits so I can just hear what people are saying, not saying, lying about, disinformation, so that I'm aware. The democracy, I feel the very fabric of our constitutional rights as people are being stripped away. And I'm wondering if those who are the MAGA, belief system really understand what's happening, or are they going to be prophetically, astounded when it's like we're starting to feel and look like Germany.
I think MAGA is starting to realize that what they voted for is not exactly what they expected. And they will start feeling the repercussions of all these federal layoffs. They will start feeling the repercussions of these tariffs and how they will pay more for goods. Politics is about, it's as they say, politics is local, and you feel it right where you are. The MAGA brand of politics has been more about being able to stick their finger in the eye of those who are not MAGA, owning the liberals, being able to crow on social media. It's never really been a movement about getting something for themselves. It's about making sure the opposition does not get something, voting against the idea of having federal loans canceled, voting against the idea of people getting any type of return on their investment in a local level, voting against the idea of expanded voting rights, voting against the idea of expanded health, female health rights. So MAGA is not about getting anything, it's about denying others, or the perception of denying others. MAGA will begin to turn when they realize that there have been detrimental effects for their vote.
And, you know, as detrimental as what we see going on with the trades and the tariffs and all of that, what really sticks out to me as I'm starting to learn more about foreign policy and getting involved in some studies around misinformation, disinformation, and what happens when a political and economic instability causes people to start to dwarf and or change. I was astonished to watch the interaction between President Zelensky and President Trump last week in what has now gone viral, because as a psychological practitioner and having my background in psychology and being a therapist, but a student of looking at cognitive dissonance and confirmational bias and belief preference, what I saw was so sickening, the condescension, even from the vice president and debating him. So when you saw that whole exchange between President Zelensky and President Trump, what were you thinking? I've never seen such a thing.
No one has seen such a thing. So let's start there. It was unprecedented in every way. Have there probably been meetings behind closed doors and no cameras, which were similar? Probably. But that type of display in public in the Oval Office has never happened. You will never see a vice president speaking across a president to condescend and ridicule and chide a world leader. That's not the place of a vice president. Vice president has no role in a bilateral meeting. You're talking about two countries coming together, having a joint meeting. Vice president doesn't have any such standing. It was unprecedented in that regard. It said to me they wanted to have a public show and an undressing, pun intended, pun not unintended. They also commented on his attire in front of the audience of Vladimir Putin and those who are pro-Russia, to somehow put Vladimir Zelensky in his proverbial place and have him say thank you and in effect bow down before Trump, because the President Trump was offering nothing but exact Russian talking points, word for word. It wasn't like he was even repackaging them. The idea that Ukraine had somehow done something to bring this on themselves is akin to saying the rape victim wore a dress and was asking for it. The trying to rewrite the history and suggest that Russia was not the aggressor, to think that Russia has ever been in alignment with the United States interests or NATO's interests, to think that because Ukraine was trying to join NATO and also get the protections of NATO, that somehow escalated the conflict. These are lies. The purpose of that Oval Office meeting was not necessarily come to agreement, but make sure that Vladimir Zelensky was somehow put in his place and forced to grovel on the world stage.
And you know, it's very interesting because as I was watching it, he sort of mentioned in a passive aggressive way upon President Zelensky's arrival about his dressing. He didn't address it directly, but in that passive aggressive way. And then ironically, just about 2 weeks prior, we're in the Oval Office with the world watching, and you had Elon Musk in a hat and dressed down with his child inside the Oval Office. And I thought to myself, what the heck is going on? Like, this is not bring your child to, the deference that it felt. I was like, we look very weak as a country. We look very chaotic as a country that does not feel any power coming from the United States of America. And the only power is this demeaning, bashing, disregarding, narcissistic kind of way. And in speaking to that, I'm thinking about how even after the audacity for them to really rally, that Zelensky needed to really basically bow. I mean, if we weren't there, who knows? They probably would have hit Zelensky and bound him up. It had that feel, and then they kicked him out, right? They told
Yeah.
him, the food that so that's the people's money going to waste. The food was there and left, and you had to go. But I think while they keep saying no, that they wanted to create a deal, all Zelensky was saying, what I heard him say, I want assurances, and you're not giving me any. Was there anything wrong with that?
Not at all, unless to give just some perspective in history. Originally, there was an agreement which was in place that Ukraine and some other countries would give up their nuclear aspirations, nuclear arms aspirations, in exchange for security. In other words, Ukraine, okay, we'll back off trying to get our own nuclear weapons, trying to become a nuclear power in the region. To why? Protect ourselves against Russia, with the assurance that the United States would provide protection. That was prior to this. And so to disregard the assurances of protection and also side with Russia and say that Ukraine is the one which started this aggression not only denies history, but is gaslighting and lying to the American people. Now, if you only started following this maybe 2 weeks ago and you took the president at his word that Ukraine started this, yeah, then it sounds reasonable. But if you follow the history in the region and understanding what it means to be part of NATO and Article 5, and that says that an attack on one is an attack on all. And that is why Ukraine wanted to join NATO, to have the security assurances that the United States was not following through on. They got rid of their nuclear capabilities so they would have protection from the United States. The United States did not follow through in many ways. So they said, let's try to join NATO. So at least we can have NATO protection. Vladimir Putin did not want Ukraine to join NATO. And if you've been following the news in the last week, it has been talked about how the United States wants to withdraw from NATO. What does that mean? It says that if there's any further aggression against Ukraine or anyone in the region like the Balkans who are members of NATO or Poland, then the United States would not be obligated to come to their aid to offer any assistance. All this is working together for the benefit of Vladimir Putin and his geopolitical designs to get the former Soviet Union back together.
Yes. And it's so interesting because I thought to myself, wow, now that I'm kind of like in it because I'm doing all this conversation with other scholars across the country and different other countries and stuff right now. So when I'm talking to people in Niger or different places, London, and it's real time. It's real time of things that are happening right now. When I looked at this whole NATO and the withdrawal of NATO, I thought about the psychological implications that it must have on the people of Ukraine. And so they showed that information right after the Zelensky and Trump meeting. They were just distraught. They were like, how can this happen? And did you see, I'm sure you watched it, I think it was the UK Prime Minister, UK, yes, and the Prime Minister of France. Oh, they are now getting together on behalf of Ukraine to come together so this the Europeans are allying with Ukraine. And I thought, is this about to be like a World War III? Or is that what Trump and Putin wanted?
Yes.
Talk about it.
Yes, and yes. The whole thing is that Europe is coming together to support Ukraine because if you believe, and I do believe, if you believe that the aspirations of Vladimir Putin is to expand the empire, expand the Russian empire, that means it will not stop with Ukraine. It didn't stop with Crimea. It's not going to stop with Ukraine. It will probably also lead to the Balkans. The Balkans, Estonia, and various states within the Balkans are mostly within NATO, which means that the first time that there is an attack or an invasion of one of the Balkan areas or Poland or any other place in Europe, that means those European countries which are in NATO are then bound by Article 5 to also intervene, which would then be the beginning of the World War III that people have been throwing around. It's not really an abstract idea anymore. If this continues to escalate and Russia continues to move and expand its territories, then yes, we will come to a moment where the nations of NATO will have to decide to get involved. That's part of the reason why Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth is publicly floating the idea of the United States leaving NATO, where we would not have any type of responsibility to defend any of our European allies.
Which leaves us most vulnerable, that when attacks come against us, if Putin decides that he wants to, regurgitate on his friendship and love fest with Trump, then guess what? He fights against us. We're not a part of NATO, so we don't have any allies coming to our rescue. And right now, with all the firing of all the Pentagon officers and workers and top chief and generals and things of that nature, I just thought to myself, who is strategically thinking about this stuff? We don't have the manpower. About a year and a half ago, I had this dream, and I'm a dreamer. So that's one of the gifts that God gave me. And I'm a strategic kind of analytical type person. So in the dream, it was really, really clear that someone is already in the White House and in the areas within our country infiltrating us, and have been for years. Like, I literally saw, to the point where I wrote it word for word, still feel that way very, very strongly. And so little by little, different little leaks. There was like a leak in New York where Chinese folks that were working for America, now they're connected to the consulate of China and all this types of stuff. My question is, and this is the big elephant in the room for me, because I've been a Democrat for all of my life, Mo, where the heck is the Democrats' voice? And they are just way too silent for me. They have no authority and power. Every time I hear every Democrat speak, or most of them, let me say, I can kind of hear a little bit of passion from what's her name, Warren, Senator Warren, and or Jasmine Crockett. But other than that, even Hakeem Jeffries, bless his little heart. But where's the voice? Where are the Democrats, and why do they not have a resolve?
I say this as someone who's a registered independent. I've been a registered independent for the better part of 25 to 30 years. So I'm not saying that I'm advocating for the Democrats, but I will tell the truth about the Democrats. And House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries has been largely absent and not demonstrated leadership in this moment of his own caucus. The fact that you mentioned Jasmine Crockett, Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett, and also Senator Elizabeth Warren, and Hakeem Jeffries was third in your mentions, only highlights that fact. What is he supposed to do? Well, legislatively, there's not a lot he can do, but he can take a page out of the Republicans' playbook when they were in the minority. And the Republicans obstructed everything. They would use a filibuster. They used every tool available to distract, delay, deny, made it very difficult for then Democrats in the majority to get anything legislatively done. And also there was a consistent message through line where you could understand what the Republicans were trying to convey to their base as far as how they were going to present the quote unquote failings of the Obama administration or the Biden administration. The Democrats have not been able to do that. They've been largely sitting on the sidelines saying, well, there's really nothing I can do. There was a message from Hakeem Jeffries that he put on social media saying that presidents come and go and there will be another president sometime in the future. It's like, well, what about these 4 years right now? The Democrats need to take a more active role. We know we have this joint session of Congress tonight. I would be interested to see if the Democrats are going to have some sort of forceful display of resistance against this particular president, who is going to be quite inflammatory in his message. He's going to be disrespectful. I'm quite sure he's going to be insulting. He's going to probably blame Biden, the former president. And there has to be a forceful resistance, because President Trump has made it very clear through his executive actions and his public pronouncements that he feels that he can roll over anyone and everyone. And something that you said, Lakita, earlier about these firings, going back to Ukraine and NATO, how better to incapacitate this country and to have someone fire your top generals, fire your top DOJ officials, fire your top FAA officials, FDA, CDC. So we are less safe on every level, from a military, legislative, disease prevention. Talk about bird flu and also the measles right now. We are vulnerable in every conceivable way. If I'm Vladimir Putin, I could not have asked for more. Yep. If there should be a future conflict or something in which the United States would be forced to intervene, we are not in a position to do this. And also, one other thing, Pete Hegseth had just announced yesterday that he was ordering all officials in the Defense Department to stand down on any Russia investigations. Why in the world would you do that? You just investigate anyone and everyone. Why? Because one, they're an adversary. Two, you want to make sure that you're protecting all of the American populace, our infrastructure, citizens, everything. You would never publicly announce that unless you're sending a message to Russia, hey, the door's open, come on in.
And that is exactly how it feels. It feels like we are sitting ducks in our own backyard with no reprieve. And even if we did have all of what we needed to have, Mo, one of the things that scares me the most as a person from the outside looking in with fresh eyes and understanding of what's going on is that we don't have the force. It's all a farce. We do not have the force. I do not feel like our armed forces are even trained. They're not even trained even mentally to handle what we are in because there's been so much slippery and slyer, misinformation, and it weakens. After I'm reading this wonderful book by Naomi Klein called Shock Doctrine. Great book, wonderful book, got to get it. And she talks about what's happening with the United States right now is called shock doctrine, where they are trying to, that's why he's coming in doing stuff he knows has to go through Congress. But guess what? Who's going to stop him? He's acting like he knows that it can get done. And the fact that the Democratic voice is so weak, it will not even stand up. And most that are standing up are Black women, right? They are, saying what they're saying and trying to get their constituent base to follow through. And thinking about that, so how do we aid? Well, let me say it like this way: if you were an advisor to House Minority Leader, Jeffrey Hakeem Jeffries, if you were his advisor, what would you advise him before the meeting tonight?
I would say that he needs to be consciously loud, not necessarily disruptive, but also make sure, I don't know who's giving the Democratic response, but in that Democratic response, which happens right after the joint session of Congress, you get to break down all the failings. You talk about the stock market, which is down 1,000 points.
A
You talk about
thousand.
you talk about the thousands of people who've been laid off, and not in an abstract way, how those are real Americans and how that's going to affect the unemployment numbers. You talk about how inflation is back up and how it's directly connected to the Trump actions. Everything that a president does is going to do one of two things. It's going to inspire confidence or create concern and confusion. And everything that President Trump has done has obviously created concern, confusion, chaos, and they should be highlighting how every act that he does, how every executive action has created confusion, chaos, and also has started ripping the country apart with the ICE raids, everything he's done. And it should be highlighted and blasted through a megaphone. If I'm talking to Hakeem Jeffries, that should be done on a daily basis. It should be streamlined and put into a consistent message that you hear each day on MSNBC, on any other outlet. And if it sounds like everyone's reading from the same talking points, so be it. But that's how messages get across. And then ultimately it starts trickling down where everyone starts repeating those messages that you have been putting out there consistently. We all know when President Obama was in office, everybody was talking about leading. Well, he's leading from behind. Where did that come from? That came from Republican talking points, and it was on Fox News. And before you know it, Billy Joe Jim Bob on the corner store was saying it as well. And that's the trickle down effect that the Democrats have failed at as far as the consistency and the pointed accuracy of their messaging, that it filters down to the general populace and it starts to work its own magic on its own.
And speaking of magic, I'm not infatuated with anything that the Republican is doing, party is doing at this particular time. But what I am fascinated with is their ability to aggregate people's emotions and energy to a specific thing, even if it's lies. So, for example, I was sitting there thinking to myself, you know why people are listening? Because everybody from the Attorney General to Pete Hegseth, everybody is actually saying the exact same thing, and they're saying it with force. So you are right, Mo, in suggesting that Jeffries needs to make sure that everyone's saying the same thing. They're all talking about waste, fraud, and abuse. I mean, I even got it down. I know exactly what they're going to say and how they're going to say it. And it makes sense because the whole thing about Doge, and that's a whole nother thing. That whole thing scares me. What are you doing with our data? And then I started digging a little bit more deeper, and our South African Elon Musk and his ties and all the things with apartheid, and it just goes back so deep. That's a whole nother conversation for a whole nother time. And here he is with a citizenship in Canada and the United States, but he's wanting to deport folks like he's, American born. And so I said all of that to say that at the end of the day, I love your summation of what the Democrats must do. Get a message, say it together, say it consistently, say it with conviction. Because right now, it feels like they have annihilated the Democratic voice.
Yeah.
But also, I will say this: longstanding Democrat, don't believe with everything they got going on, but some of this is our own doing. We fought for some of the wrong concepts and things of the nature. And so what people enjoy about President Trump is that he came back and he said it'd be male and female. And, he went in with targeting what most of his base wanted and needed to hear. And so my question I had as a last thought, and this kind of ties into it. What do you think happened with President Harris's campaign? What do you think happened with President Harris's campaign run for the president? And what's the state of America now? Like, where are we going?
Vice President Harris, I think she was a victim of general Democratic apathy. The Democrats didn't understand the moment that they were in, and they wanted to quibble out about, well, she didn't actually go through a full primary, or she's not left enough, or she's not this. Vice President Harris, and I've been very critical of her, ran almost a picture perfect campaign given the circumstances.
Yeah.
But the Democrats wanted to let the perfect be the enemy of the good. And they wanted to say we didn't know her, or we didn't like her history, didn't know that on the other side was what we're dealing with right now. We're not talking about shades of gray here. We're talking about someone who's trying his best impression at being a dictator, and someone who was good and just, and maybe you didn't like her laugh, or maybe you weren't sure about the fullness of her legislative history, or maybe you weren't sure that she was going to be as tough on Israel as you want to be, but you said you either stayed home or you said, you know what, I'll give President Trump, this guy, a second chance, when you knew what he did in 2016 to 2020. He told you what he was going to do with immigration. He told you what he was going to do with Doge. And if maybe you just didn't believe him, maybe you didn't take him seriously. The problem, I should say, with our country is we are more hewing to emotions.
Yes.
What Donald Trump does better than the Democrats is he understands his base, and they are emotionally focused. He tells them what they want to hear. The whole idea of making English the national language by executive action, that doesn't mean anything. It doesn't do anything. But to his white base, it is what they wanted to hear. The anti-immigrant base is what they wanted to hear. He understands his MAGA base intimately. The whole production in the Oval Office really wasn't about the rest of the world. It was about his MAGA base. Yes. He is forever in campaign mode, even though there's not an election on the horizon. And if anything, that keeps his base solid. They're not going anywhere because he's always catering to them. The Democrats have to learn that they need more than a pillow in a gunfight. I don't understand why they are so passive in all this. I just don't understand. Going back to Kamala Harris, she did everything she was supposed to do. She was supposed to unite the party as best she could, and she only had maybe 13 weeks to do it. She raised all the money in the world. She crisscrossed the country. She combined young and old, and there are those people in this country who would refuse to vote for a Black woman no matter what. She can't control that. There are people in this country who would refuse to vote for a Black woman or a woman no matter what. She can't control that. That's the problem with America.
Even Black people, the self-hatred, the internalized self-hatred of Black people, that is so astounding in the conversation. And merely because it is a woman, merely because she is Black, and they heard news that she put away all these Black people, this, that, the other, and all these things. But now they're willing to embrace a dictator. And once we've tapped into it and tasted it, which we are tasting it right now, like it feels very fractioned. I'm thinking, wow, I'm getting ready to go to South Africa here next month. And so we're always checking to make sure, is it good to go to South Africa? Do I need to say I'm from another country other than the United States of America? Because it's so dubious. It's so different. It's like they want to pick a fight. America's like, it wants to pick a fight, but then it doesn't want to pick a fight. And Vice President Harris, I think that she was set up. I think that she got the wrong intel. I really, once again, I probably don't need to be known. I'm just good at giving people the kind of confidence that will relate to the public, right? And I kept saying to myself, who do I know that knows her to where I could just talk to her for 5 minutes? Because where she's going is not working. Her inability to even slightly want to get away from President Joe Biden's concepts and things of that nature, it made her look even more weaker. Like, and not that you slam the shoulders that you've been on or who you've worked with, not talking about that, but we're just merely talking about saying President Biden has done a great job and da 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 da. One of the things I would like to do to further us along the way is da da da, and she wouldn't do it.
But Lakita, let me jump in there. In a normal campaign, in a normal America, I would 100% agree with you. But on the other side, her political adversary was certifiably insane, saying absolutely outlandish, ridiculous stuff.
It's
and
true.
He probably would be committed if he were, a non-politician. There's no way in the world that I'm going to hold Kamala Harris to a standard that I don't hold Donald Trump to. And that speaks to the ill of America, where he was perceived as a reasonable option, much less someone that we would choose as a nation. Yes, I know he did not get the majority of the total population vote, but he won the popular vote in an electoral college sense. He won the electoral college. He is our president, all conspiracy theories aside. There's a sickness here in America to even think that former game show host should have ever been president once, much less twice. And since America chose him again, it says that they weren't really having a serious conversation about who was going to lead us. To even think that Kamala Harris was somehow less of a choice or a worse choice than Donald Trump. We see the insanity and the psychopathy of this man.
You couldn't have said it any better. Mo, you brought out something, and as we get ready to come to a close, you brought out this whole notion of just really think about it. Here it is, we have elected a president twice, and I love the way you said it, talk show host, but also bankruptcy, fraud, misogyny, allegations of sexual abuse, felonies at the Wu Yang Yang, just all these things, and yet if it was a different situation. And yes, I'm going to pull the race card for a second. If it was a Black man, he would never, ever, they would be trying to find ways. If it was Obama, to try to get him impeached. I've heard people say presidents can't really get impeached. They really can never go to jail. I've heard people have that conversation. They can't really go to jail. I've been in great in-depth conversation where people are like, they're never going to go to jail because they've been the president of the United States. I said, then all of this is a farce. Then what do we do? And I get it. They have intel that is specific, but to see this rat race where you've got Elon Musk almost portraying like he is a president of some sort, all these in the cabinet meeting, and the cabinet's just sitting there, and it's just ludicrous. It's like, so what is the setup? Is he trying to become a dictator? And how do we start to stay psychologically sane?
He's trying to insulate himself from any type of pushback. He fired the inspectors general. He fired all the people at the DOJ, who were not loyal to him. That's the dictator's playbook. How far he'll get, I don't know. But America will start responding when it touches them personally. And for me personally, and I try to leave my personal feelings out of any commentary, part of me almost wanted Donald Trump to win for this reason. Because when you have Republicans and MAGA thinking that everything is working against them or the election was stolen from them, they will never accept anyone who's president. Now that they've gotten their way and America's going to go through hell after getting their way, there's no one that they'll able to be able to blame going forward. Donald Trump has gotten all of his people. He's fired everybody. He's fired all the generals. He's enacting all these executive actions, and the country is still on its precipice of going to hell. So at the end, whenever we get past Donald Trump, whenever we get past this moment, we'll be done with him. That's why I think it might have been necessary for him to win, for us to go through all this hell, and I mean it, hell, for us to get to the other side of him.
You couldn't have said it any better. As a person who's also a student of the Word of God, I also know that hell is absolutely true in terms of the analysis of what we're going to go through, whether it's our dollar not mattering, whether people don't take the United States serious, we're not being a world power that we have assumed ourselves to be. A lot of things have changed. A lot of things are changing. And part of my desire, and even doing shows like this and other shows that I do, like I Speak Life, is to remind the country, remind the people that you're going to have to really stay emotionally sane, because things are shifting in ways that our forefathers never, ever saw coming. And yet, we knew that it would come. We just did not know it would come like this. So before we leave, if you want to give your lasting thought, Mo, feel free to our audience, and then we are out and looking forward to another time.
Very quickly, I didn't mean to correct your introduction, but I now host Later with Mo Kelly, Monday through Friday on KFI AM 640. You can catch me also on the Black Information Network with my daily commentary, The 2-Minute Warning. Reach me on social media at Mr. Mo Kelly, just about everywhere, MrMokelly, except for on X. You will not find me there. I encourage you to reach out so we can continue this dialogue. Be active, be involved, and understand that just because it's said on cable news, that's not actually the news. That's opinion and editorial. Go to actual news sources to get more of the facts.
Listen, I love the update, please, and we will make sure that we will post it on our page and all of our pages. And we are super excited that you have joined us. I am enthralled. I feel excited. I am inspired to study, to learn, and to have you again on these hot topics. I'm telling you, we're going to have you again on these hot topics. I'm trying to get Miss Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett and several other people, even Roland Martin, and different folks I want to have in this discussion about what's going on, what do we need to do, and what's the action about getting all people involved for a better justice of today. Thank you so much. We're looking forward to it. And for those of you guys who are watching us, we are just loving on you. I appreciate you for all your love, your care, your concern. You guys have done great shout outs on the page. And yes, I was nervous because this is a totally different area, but hey, this is my year of becoming. So become with me as we go to that wonderful place called there. Enjoy yourself. And remember, as I always say, you do got this, and God bless. Thank you so much.